Okay, so yeah, obviously the TOGAF 9 Foundation is a different syllabus if you look at them, and the TOGAF EA Foundation. What we've done with EA Foundation is focus specifically on what an enterprise architect would need to know. With what we had with the TOGAF 9 syllabuses, they were very broad and covered all of the standards, so they would cover a bunch of things, a bunch of areas. Perhaps, you know, there would be more focus on the preliminary phase that we would have less in an EA. So establishing a practice is not something that we would particularly cover now in EA Foundation. We have a separate leaders certification credential for that. If you look at the two, if you actually look at the number of learning outcomes, you will actually see that EA is actually slightly smaller. The enterprise architecture number of learning outcomes is actually reduced over what we had in the TOGAF 9 syllabus, and that's partially to also allow us to do the practical exercises, because that's one thing we wanted to do was include a practical element with the new certification for TOGAF Enterprise Architecture Practitioner. Yeah, credentials are designed as short courses, so they're typically about 8 or 9 units. At the moment, we're offering those as online self-study. The specific length of a course, obviously, when you do self-study, it's really, you know, as long as you want to spend on it. We're typically allowing people 60 days in our self-study online system. They're very lightweight. The idea is they're lightweight, that you can take them at your own pace. The assessment on them is actually built into the certification credential. It's basically a 30 question. It's very, you know, 30 questions, you have to score 75%, but the main thing there is to reinforce the learning. They're not as rigorous. Perhaps the certification credentials are more about managed learning rather than, you know, going on a formal course and then taking the formal exam. So that's the difference. The idea is to take you through with managed learning through the syllabus. So through the digital specialism specialist, the agile specialist, leader, and so on, take the assessment that's built into the course, and then you can get the certification credential badge. So they're basically designed, what I'd say, probably, hopefully one day, you know, if you sat down and did all of the modules straight in a row, I imagine it would take you, you know, one day or less. So as I mentioned, on one course, the integrating risk and security, that's as little as 3 hours. Some, you know, so, but these other ones are a little bit bigger. I think integrating risk and security was 5 short modules. These ones are 9 modules. You're typically talking about working your way through, I guess, probably 150, 200 slides. It really depends on your pace and how much background reading you want to sort of to put in on how long those take. So at the moment, they are, as I mentioned, they're basically they're available as self-study. They can be available from the ATC providers. I don't think any ATC providers have taken them up yet, but the ATC providers are basically focusing on transitioning to the enterprise architecture certifications at the moment. As I mentioned, the TOGAF Standard version 9.2 is widely adopted in the marketplace. And what we've done with the 10th edition is very much an evolution of it. So we will continue to support both in parallel for, you know, for as long as there is market demand. You know, TOGAF version 9.2 obviously has evolved over the last sort of 10 years since it came out. Obviously, the 10th edition has built on that, basically restructured what was the 9.2 standard into the fundamental content, added the TOGAF series guides, and obviously long term, you know, when the market you know, will evolve, so we'll expect to see, you know, people will switch, but obviously that takes time. You know, when you've got an enterprise and organization with its practice, there's no need for them to, you know, for them to say, right, we've got to switch from 9 to 10 because it's very much, you know, compatible. And we don't like to sort of dictate the pace of when organizations need to make change. They need to make that choice themselves, you know, when it's right for them. You know, obviously some organizations, you know, can switch very quickly. Other ones can, you know, take their time and say, no, we've got to stay with this for whatever the sort of, you know, planning horizon is. Well, If you look at the open group standards, we actually have the Open Agile Architecture Standard is actually a separate standard. It's complementary to the TOGAF standard, so they very much can be used together. What we will probably see over time is more of a blending of the two together. At the moment, they're separate. They're actually now both maintained by the Open Group Architecture Forum, so they're both contained. So the idea is, you know, very much, it's almost taking a look at architecture from a slightly different view. So that's what it is. It's very much complementary, goes into a lot of sort of techniques, into a lot of different techniques in detail. You know, obviously you can use those techniques together. So it doesn't. So the answer is no, it doesn't contain it. The agility that we cover in the 10th edition in the TOGAF series guides is very much about either using the ADM, sprinting with the ADM, so agile sprints, or actually using the EA with agility. So it's actually developing your EA with agility. So it's sort of, it's looking at it sort of very much applying the TOGAF method, the TOGAF framework with agility, whereas open agile architecture is all about other techniques you can apply with architecture in a complementary way that you could use the two. The idea is you could use TOGAF and what we call the OAA standard together, if you wished. No, it doesn't, I think, is the short answer. But however, there are other areas, there are other forums of the open group that are looking at, you know, that we have specifically that address both security. We have a security forum that's doing a lot on what we call zero trust architecture at the moment. Digital transformation, obviously, yes, you can apply the TOGAF standard for digital transformation, absolutely. You know, but also we have other things like the digital practitioner's body of knowledge, which also looks at digital transformation. But obviously you can use the two together. One thing we're doing, you'll see a project, you may come across a project on the Open Group's website, which is what we call the portfolio of digital open standards. And that's bringing a set of our standards together and basically producing a sort of an interactive web portal where you can see 3 or 4 standards actually integrated and use them together. The TOGAF standard will be in there, the Archimate standard, the IT for IT standard, the Open Agile Architectures standard, and also the digital practitioner body of knowledge, all integrated together to actually support, you know, a digital transformation. Yeah, basically at the moment, what we have for business architecture is a foundation level. Now, the business architecture sort of subgroup within the architecture forum is continuing to work on additional TOGAF series guides. So we'll basically see that body of knowledge will be expected to expand. I think they're doing more advice around business capabilities specifically, if I recall. So I think, you know, these are the sort of areas that we will expect. Whether or not we'll get to a higher level certification, I don't know at the moment. Obviously, we need sort of a significant addition to the body of knowledge to make it worth adding another level up. Yeah, so if you look at our exams, we've actually got a whole new set of exams that were actually been available since October last year, which covered the new learning paths in the 10th edition. So you will see there are 10, what we call TOGAF Enterprise Architecture Part 1, TOGAF Enterprise Architecture Part 2, and a combined exam, and also a bridge exam for EA. There's a Business Architecture Foundation exam. Obviously, the TOGAF 9 exams, they continue to exist out there, continue to be supported. So we have TOGAF 9 Part 1, Part 2. So obviously, if you're looking at the exams, if you see if it's got TOGAF 9 in it, obviously that's the clue. It's for the version 9 program. The new exams are based on the new naming. So, you know, they are called Enterprise Architecture and also Business Architecture. Yes, you can go to the Open Group library. So if you go, as I mentioned, go to www.opengroup.org, go along the top to library, click in there, click in certification, and then click TOGAF, and you'll come into a set of documents. You should see some documents that are called conformance requirements. They are basically a listing of what is in the body of knowledge. So the body of knowledge basically is a set of what we call learning outcomes. It says, you know, what a student for a particular learning unit should be expected to know, and then references into the document. Obviously, you can download or read the actual full documents online as well. Okay, Agile Specialist. Again, at the moment, you can go to the Open Group shop, and basically you can purchase online self-study, and then you can basically go into an online learning management system. You can take the modules online, and also the assessment is online. And then when you completed the assessment, you basically click on the form, and you put in your details. It's basically what we call a self-study claim form. That puts in your details about that you've taken the course. We then, in the back office, we just do a check, and then basically the badge is issued via Credly, usually within a few working days of a course being completed and you obviously passing the assessment. It should be, you know, basically as long as we still support the program. There is no specific time of when you've got to retake by you. Obviously, you cannot take a retake within 1 month. There's always a cooling off period for the TOGAF exam. So if you fail an exam, you have to wait at least 1 month before you take it again. But there isn't really a timeout. I think if you're trying to claim what we call a discount voucher, because what you can do is if you fail an exam, if you self-studied, you can get a discount voucher from the Open Group. We do say that you have to make that claim within 2 years. Obviously, you can also get a retake voucher from your ATC provider who may offer them. So you should always, if you've taken training with an ATC provider, obviously approach your trainer first to find out if they offer retakes. Some do, some don't. Otherwise, you can come to the Open Group and get a retake discount voucher for a retake. We have what we call a candidate's advice sheet. So if you attend the course, you get a voucher as part of your course. You should always get the candidate's advice sheet, and that goes into, it's about 4 or 5 pages of detail about what to do if, what if I fail, what do I do, what if this, and all this sort of thing. So we've got a lot of advice on that sheet about various situations that you might need to encounter. In fact, if you go to the Open Group website, you click on certifications, then go to our TOGAF Certification Portfolio page. On the top right, we actually have 3 slides, and you can download the 3-slide. It's almost like the 3-slide overview of the different learning paths and different options. Yeah. So that's what we would recommend for that one. That sounds right. Obviously, I don't memorize them all, but that does sound right. And in fact, what you need to do is you need to, as I meant, if you're really interested in the detailed syllabus, go to the Open Group library, go down the certification TOGAF sort of track in that library. You can find then what we call the TOGAF conformance requirements multi-level, and I think it's version 4 is the latest one for the 10th edition. And when you open up that document, you will be able to look at, this is the syllabus for EA level 1, EA level 2. It's also got business architecture in it. You can see for each learning outcome then which document and which section of the document it draws from. So as I say, we don't require you necessarily, if you looked at G152, that is actually that's integrating risk and security. We wouldn't expect you to know all of that, but there are certain sections perhaps where it talks about the security requirements, say for phase A or something, that would be in the syllabus for an enterprise architect. So we would map to that in the conformance requirements. Now, if you do go into our library and you look at the conformance requirements, you'll actually see that the bridge conformance requirements are actually a separate document. And the reason we broke those out separately is because maybe in the future the bridge might go away. That's what we tend to do, is the bridge is usually only available for a number of years. So at the moment there are no plans, but maybe in 2 or 3 years time we say, right, given everybody the opportunity to bridge from TOGAF 9 up to the new certification, and then we'll withdraw it. But as I say, there's no plans at the moment. Also, when you go to the library, you can also get the conformance requirements for the certification credentials. They're available as separate documents, so you can find out what the syllabus is for Agile Specialist, Digital Specialist, and EA Leader as well there. I should say also under the, if you go to the Open Group website and again, go to our TOGAF Certification Portfolio page, there is a link to a bunch of FAQs. So you can click on there and there's a set of FAQs specific just to the portfolio and the new learning paths there. Well, at the moment, the tool certification, I imagine there are tools that apply that do. However, at the moment, there is no formal certification for the tools based on the 10th edition. That's something that the Architecture Forum will work on at some point. They've got a program for tools that are based on the TOGAF 9.2 standard. It's basically a detailed questionnaire that a vendor who supports the TOGAF standard has to complete to sort of document how their tool supports the standard. As you can imagine, a tool could support, you know, maybe a small piece of the standard or all of the standard. It's obviously quite a difference. And so you would basically have to approach your vendor right now, your tools vendor, to find out, you know, whether or not they've updated to support the 10th edition.
Yeah, I think just want to add, I only know the Archimedes 3.2 notation has been supported in the quite number of the EA tools out there.